Explanation and disclaimer. Please listen to this before listening to any of the hypnosis material on this channel. Hello, and welcome to your self-improvement hypnotherapy session. Congratulations on making the decision to embrace change. What follows is a series of explanations and considerations for you to rely upon as you listen to this and other powerful life improvement recordings offered on this channel. You should listen to this recording before using any of the other recordings on offer here as part of your comprehensive self-improvement program. Please do close your eyes and relax so this series of disclaimers and clarifications can sink deeply into your subconscious mind. To make the best use of any of the hypnotic, therapeutic, and relaxation recordings on this channel, listen every day, whenever you have some free time, or whenever you just want to feel relaxed. You can listen in the morning as you awaken, or any time during the day, during an afternoon siesta, in the evening, before or after dinner, or at bedtime. It makes no difference whatsoever. You will achieve the same result no matter what time of day you listen. If you listen at a time of day when you will be going about your daily activities when you are done, you will fully rouse yourself at the end of your session, alert, calm, and suffused with a sense of overall well-being. If you choose to listen at bedtime, at the end of the recording, you will drift off into a very deep, restorative slumber, from which you will awaken at your customary time, again feeling very well rested, alert, and ready to accomplish whatever you need to accomplish. Try to find some time to listen to the recording of your choice at least once a day for the first week, and then 2 to 3 times a week every week thereafter to reinforce the change you seek to bring within yourself. At some indeterminate point, you will achieve your goal. About 45% of users will see an immediate improvement after the first session, and another 45% will see some improvement over the course of the first week. About 15% will see benefit after 2 weeks. Most people receive as much benefit from the experience as they are open to receiving. The vast majority of people are receptive to hypnosis, and most will experience some subjective benefit immediately upon beginning the program or shortly thereafter. All sessions are intended to be used as an adjunct to any other treatment that you may be obtaining from any of the following specializations: your allergist, your chiropractor, your dermatologist, your internist, your geneticist, your neurologist, your gynecologist, your obstetrician, your ophthalmologist, your physical therapist, your psychiatrist, your psychologist, your surgeon, your urologist, or any other medical or mental health care provider. Although this is a very powerful therapeutic technique, you are under no circumstances advised to rely solely on these sessions, but rather to continue to avail yourself of whatever care is available to you according to the best practices of the relevant disciplines as established by the licensing and accrediting bodies of the country, other local municipal authority, state, department, province, prefecture, territory, region, or nation-state in which you happen to reside, without regard to whether these treatments are provided to all who need them or your ability to pay. This program of self-improvement is both scientifically and spiritually rigorous, drawing upon Enlightenment era political philosophy, the ancient mystical traditions of the esoteric masters, and the hermetic arts and sciences, secret knowledge passed down through the generations. With practice, you can access this storehouse of collective learning from the antediluvian past, beyond the ken of ordinary people, the accumulated knowledge of 800 generations of humanity from every inhabited continent, stretching back into prehistory. Each of these sessions is designed and intended to take you into a state of deep hypnosis. These sessions are designed and intended to help you reach a state that is nearly coma-like. In all of these sessions, we will be going as deep as we possibly can go, and with repeated use, even deeper. Do keep your eyes closed and relax. Every hypnotherapy session, by definition, begins with a hypnotic induction, a process by which the subject enters trance. Not every induction works maximally for every subject. Therefore, to maximize the depth of trance, follow the instructions in the recording to use each of the multiple induction techniques in sequence. You may find through the course of the induction and repeated use that some parts are more effective for you than other parts. Focus in a self-conscious way on relaxing most deeply during the parts that seem most effective for you, and then realize that even the parts of the induction that are less effective for you personally can nonetheless still deepen your trance state. Give yourself over to the trance state, trusting that you can achieve the deepest possible level of relaxation. The ability to enter trance is like a muscle. The more you practice the use of this muscle, the deeper you can go. The more you practice, the deeper you go. And the deeper you go, the more profound change you will achieve. Given that you will be entering the deepest possible trance, you must forego certain categories of activities while you listen to this or other recordings on this channel, and any other hypnotherapy recordings or hypnosis recordings that you may avail yourself of. Under no circumstances should you engage in any of the following activities while you are listening to this or any other hypnotic or relaxation recording. You should not listen while driving a motor car or automobile. You should not listen while driving a lorry or truck. You should not listen while riding a motorcycle. You should not listen while riding a moped or motor scooter. You should not listen while walking on a sidewalk or trail of any kind. You should not listen while swimming either in a pool or across a body of water of any size. You should not listen while operating machinery. You should not listen while repairing machinery. You should not listen while riding a horse, pony, camel, or any other animal used as a riding animal. You should not listen while giving yourself a haircut. You should not listen while giving someone else a haircut. You should not listen while piloting an aeroplane, hang glider, helicopter, hot air balloon, or zeppelin. You should not listen while mountaineering. You should not listen while cooking breakfast, lunch, dinner, any other meal. You should not listen while working on a construction site or any other potentially hazardous place. You should not listen while serving as an attorney, judge, or juror in any proceeding, either civil or criminal. You should not listen while you are a participant in any court proceeding of any kind. You should not listen while engaged in gaming or gambling of any kind. You should not listen while you are doing parkour. You should not listen while performing surgery or any other medical procedure. You should not listen while walking your dog, cat, lobster, or any other animal. You should not listen while painting. You should not listen while writing. You should not listen while watching baseball, auto racing, or any other sporting event in person where the actual event may pose a danger to spectators. You should not listen while doing carpentry. You should not listen while engaging in scientific research. You should not listen while attending a peaceful protest, demonstration, civil disobedience, or any other kind of political event. You should not listen while taking part in a violent insurrection to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. You should not listen while you have the kettle on. You should not listen while providing child care in any setting. You should not listen while butchering, baking, or candlestick making. You should not listen while sewing. You should not listen while performing tattooing or body modification of any kind. You should not listen while attending any childbirth, either as a nurse, obstetrician, midwife, partner, or spouse. You should not listen while attending a lecture or giving a lecture or presentation of any kind. You should not listen while hunting game of any kind. You should not listen while studying. You should not listen while working in a retail setting in any capacity. You should not listen while engaged in combat operations. You should not listen while operating a lawnmower, weed whacker, hedge trimmer, or any power outdoor tool. You should not listen while applying nail polish to fingernails or toenails. You should not listen while fishing. You should not listen while working under deep cover, either for law enforcement or for espionage purposes. You should not listen while shaking it like a Polaroid picture. You should not listen while working with wild animals of any kind. You should not listen while freeing the neck. You should not listen while piloting a boat of any kind. You should not listen while completing your income tax return. You should not listen while tending a campfire in a fire, or even tending a fire in a fireplace at your home or any other home. You should not listen while engaged in strenuous exercise. You should not listen while skydiving. You should not listen while hacking NORAD. You should not listen while windsurfing. You should not listen while doing a jigsaw puzzle. You should not listen while pondering strange geometries. You should not listen while taking part in a parade. You should not listen while breeding livestock. You should not listen while installing vital signs not listen while quarrying rock, stone, or any mineral. You should not listen while handling explosives. You should not listen while spelunking. You should not listen while visiting a zoo or circus. You should not listen while hosting a book club. You should not listen while doing the crossword. You should not listen while engaged in any criminal activity. You should not listen while writing poetry. You should not listen while power washing your house. You should not listen while harvesting any crops. You should not listen while framing a house. You should not listen while performing on stage. You should not listen while writing poetry. You should not listen while calling a game of bingo. You should not listen while scrapbooking. You should not listen while bird watching. You should not listen while doing yoga. You should not listen while cleaning your aquarium. You should not listen while kayaking. You should not listen while tromboning. You should not listen while driving a go-kart. You should not listen while gardening. You should not listen while at the range. You should not listen while grocery shopping. You should not listen while auctioneering. You should not listen while podcasting. You should not listen while hang gliding. You should not listen while kayaking. You should not listen while catwalk modeling. You should not listen while folding origami. You should not listen while playing hopscotch. You should not listen while moisture farming. You should not listen while performing a CPR. You should not listen while immunizing eschaton. You should not listen while reading. You should not listen while practicing magic, sorcery, or witchcraft. You should not listen while arm wrestling. You should not listen while day trading. You should not listen while taking communion. You should not listen while grooming your pet. You should not listen while studying. You should not listen while doing jazzercise. You should not listen while serving as a pallbearer. You should not listen while watching a movie. You should not listen while scuba diving. You should not listen while trick-or-treating. You should not listen while performing a stand-up comedy routine. You should not listen while managing your business. You should not listen while canvassing. You should not listen while coveting thy neighbor's house, thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass. You should not listen while composting. You should not listen while wood carving. You should not listen while parasailing. You should not listen while logging. You should not listen while welding. You should not listen while pulling someone's leg. You should not listen while spearfishing. You should not listen while conducting statistical analysis. You should not listen while whitewater rafting. You should not listen while adding insult to injury. You should not listen while dancing. You should not listen while comparing apples to oranges. You should not listen while barbecuing. You should not listen while giving a TED Talk. You should not listen while conducting scientific research. You should not listen while brewing. You should not listen while settling old scores. You should not listen while licking the envelopes for your wedding invitations. You should not listen while putting baby in a corner. You should not listen while engaging in a wild rumpus. You should not listen while doing team building exercises. You should not listen while burning bridges. You should not listen while crushing candy. You should not listen while blacksmithing. You should not listen while enforcing the law. You should not listen while looking for the method in the madness. You should not listen while undergoing a psychological evaluation. You should not listen while letting a cat out of the bag. You should not listen while herding sheep. You should not listen while engaged in the topiary arts. You should not listen while simply walking into Mordor. You should not listen while performing dentistry of any kind. You should not listen while gold fishing. You should not listen while grinding bones to make your bread. You should not listen while adventuring. You should not listen while taking an arrow to the knee. You should not listen while throwing caution to the wind. You should not listen while playing badminton. You should not listen while putting all your eggs into baskets without regard to the number of baskets into which you are putting your eggs. You should not listen while collecting mushrooms. You should not listen while taking a comprehensive doctoral examination. You should not listen while entering data. You should not listen while laying pipe. You should not listen while chamfering. You should not listen while grinding. You should not listen while expressing. You should not listen while beating a dead horse. You should not listen while doing masonry. You should not listen while applying equilibrium analysis techniques to social welfare. You should not listen while shrimping. You should not listen while going down in flames. You should not listen while waiting tables. You should not listen while exterminating insects or other animals considered pests. You should not listen while self-flagellating. You should not listen while making sweet, sweet love. You should not listen while serving afternoon tea. You should not listen while caramel dancing. You should not listen while listening to any other recording. You should not listen while animating. You should not listen while cutting the mustard. You should not listen while coopering. You should not listen while dabbing. You should not listen while emergency planning. You should not listen while dining. You should not listen while playing a card game. You should not listen while blowing glass. You should not listen while making balloon animals. You should not listen while moonwalking. You should not listen while delivering bad news. You should not listen while engaging in cartography. You should not listen while cranking 90s. You should not listen while learning a new language. You should not listen while base jumping. You should not listen while framing a house. You should not listen while nuclear engineering. You should not listen while saving the world from intercontinental ballistic tweets. You should not listen while building a rocket. You should not listen while fighting a mummy. You should not listen while climbing up the Eiffel Tower. You should not listen while discovering something that doesn't exist. You should not listen while giving a monkey a shower. You should not listen while shampooing a carpet. You should not listen while mulching. You should not listen while waiting in car line. You should not listen while conducting an extravehicular activity. You should not listen while doing the egg dance. You should not listen while sitting on the fence. You should not listen while developing a communications strategy. You should not listen while staging an intervention. You should not listen while bounty hunting. You should not listen while stacking lumber. You should not listen while grading. You should not listen while staging a house. You should not listen while jumping on the bandwagon. You should not listen while taking notes. You should not listen while conducting oversight of any federal agency. You should not listen while opening Pandora's box. You should not listen while forecasting the weather. You should not listen while planning for retirement. You should not listen while making friends and influencing people. You should not listen while partnering with thought leaders. You should not listen while decorating for the holidays. You should not listen while manscaping. You should not listen while changing the culture. You should not listen while making hay without regard to whether or not the sun is shining. You should not listen while plumbing. You should not listen while drilling down to navigate next-gen competitive intelligence. You should not listen while silversmithing. You should not listen while taking a holistic approach to the analytic space. You should not listen while eating your hat. You should not listen while performing surgery. You should not listen while integrating strategic collaborations. You should not listen while clearing brush. You should not listen while onboarding the relevant stakeholders. You should not listen while designing furniture. You should not listen while meaningfully moving the needle. You should not listen while cheese making. You should not listen while shaping up. You should not listen while shipping out. You should not listen while innovating. You should not listen while exploring an active volcano. You should not listen while deploying the tactical salami. You should not listen while optimizing a disruptive bleeding-edge transformation. You should not listen while soldering. You should not listen while catching flies, either with honey or vinegar. You should not listen while plotting an astrological chart. You should not listen while playing Quidditch. You should not listen while giving 110% to become a best-in-class rock star game changer. You should not listen while running for elected office. You should not listen while programming your VCR. You should not listen while installing a laminate flooring. You should not listen while making buggy whips. You should not listen while sculpting. You should not listen while hitting the nail on the head. You should not listen while basket weaving. You should not listen while giving up your day job. You should not listen while resetting your Google password. You should not listen while cleaning your car. You should not listen while storming a castle. You should not listen while performing in a circus. You should not listen while jumping the shark. You should not listen while demanding an extra sausage. You should not listen while forward observing. You should not listen while stealing from the rich to give to the poor. You should not listen while running errands. You should not listen while writing songs. You should not listen while philosophizing. You should not listen while prize fighting. You should not listen while washing your car. You should not listen while installing shingles on a roof. You should not listen while queuing. You should not listen while snitching. You should not listen while getting uptight. You should not listen while thinking analytically. You should not listen while uncritically perpetuating oppressive ideas and ideologies. You should not listen while harshing anyone's mellow. And so these are just some of the things you should not do while listening to the therapeutic, hypnotic, and relaxation content on this channel. While this list is not comprehensive, it is also not exhaustive. If you have any doubt as to whether or not you ought to engage in a particular activity while listening to any content on this channel or any other channel, ask yourself the question, can I safely engage in this activity while sitting or lying in a prone position? If the answer is no, then hold off on engaging in the activity until such time as you have completed listening to this recording, or simply wait to listen to this recording until such a time as you are able to listen while either sitting or prone. Above all, use your common sense and good judgment. You may now enjoy and relax while listening to the hypnotic and relaxation content on this channel.